Hi, I'm Dr. Don Boomgaarden, President of St. Joseph's College, and I'd like to welcome you to St. Joseph's College, Living Our Mission. Built on tradition and founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph more than 100 years ago, we are a mission-driven institution that provides a strong academic and value-oriented education with growing, diverse campuses located in Patchogue and Brooklyn, New York, as well as online. Thank you for joining us. In this program, we will be discussing our return to in-person classes, student life, and athletics. From March 2020 through August 2021, the majority of our courses and student activities had to take place remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, our student athletes were not able to compete or practice for a significant portion of this time. This September, we were able to not only bring back nearly all of our students for in-person learning, but also resume our in-person student life and athletics programs. To speak more about the return of these vital programs is Shantey Hill-Hanna, Vice President for Student Life and Campus Services and Chair for Physical Education, and Ashleigh Hartwig, a senior at SJC Brooklyn and a member of the SJC Bears softball teams and tennis team, and a double major in chemistry and mathematics. So Shantey and Ashleigh, I'm so happy to have you with us today. This is a great topic. St. Joseph's College is blessed with a very large athletic program because we have two campuses, and I'm the president of a college that has two different teams, two different mascots. And my college actually plays itself, which is remarkable. You know, I don't know any other president that goes to an athletic event to watch the college play itself, but the Bears and the Eagles frequently will play. They're in the same athletic conference. And so people ask me, well, who do you root for? And I say, well, I root for the home team. So when I'm in Brooklyn, I root for Brooklyn. When I'm in Long Island, I root for Long Island. In each case, I can't really lose. But it's hard for me when one of the team does lose because I feel so close to both of them. So athletics is an important part of our persona at St. Joe's. We have wonderful teams, and Shantey, you've been involved in athletics even before you became the Vice President for Student Life. You were the Director of Athletics, and so you have a special connection with athletics. And along with doing all of that, you've been a very important figure on campus during the pandemic because you headed our crisis team that dealt with the COVID pandemic and our approaches to it. And you did a magnificent job. And I think one of the reasons you did such a great job is you had that understanding for the entire college community, not only Brooklyn, also Long Island, not only student athletes, but also all of the clubs and activities involved in student life. And so your knowledge of student life and your knowledge of the students was really something that gave us the ability to weather through that crisis. But that being said, what was it like for you as you had to make those shifts in athletics and student life from an active on-campus environment to the remote environment because of the pandemic?
Very interesting at times, without a doubt. I don't think any of us had any experience in dealing with the pandemic. So it was very interesting times, and it was a little challenging, without a doubt, specifically with athletics and also student life. I think we sort of took the decision-making in threefold. The first was to really understand what was happening. Again, we had never dealt with such a pandemic or any issue of such magnitude, so we really needed to understand what was happening with the pandemic and COVID-19. That meant lots of scrutinization of local CDC, State Department of Health laws and bylaws and guidelines that were coming down, which were changing rapidly as the entire country started to try to figure out what COVID-19 really was. So that sort of was the first area that we delve into. And then once we got to understand how the pandemic would affect the health and safety of our campus population and our student athletes and student life programming. The second piece, I think, specifically with student athletes was to really collaborate with the NCAA, which is the National Collegiate Athletic Association, as well as our Skyline Conference, in addition to collaborating with our peer institutions, just to figure out how we would go about this, because there is lots of competition with student athletes. Certainly there's competition, but we really needed to understand how it would affect their eligibility as a student athlete. We have lots of senior student athletes who are looking to participate in their last varsity collegiate athletic experience. So the decision to, not participate was not taken lightly, but I think we made the best decision in doing so with the collaboration of the NCAA information as well as the Skyline information and peer institution information.
Well, I think you put your finger on it when you talk about the emotions involved. From a distance, people might not realize just how important these athletic activities are to our students, what they mean to them, not only while they're students, but then of course after they leave us. Those experiences are some of the most powerful and important experiences that they have. So Ashleigh, what was it like for you in March of 2020 when we had to make that shift?
So it was very shocking because both my roommates at the time were seniors. So I kind of felt that side of it where they just were angry, irritated, those type of emotions. And so it was really just, we weren't expecting it. Like, we wouldn't have a practice and that was our last practice. So just having that was just not the best what we were expecting. But we understood from, the athletic side of knowing COVID was an occurrence and it was going to get worse. And so it was the smart decision. But it was just something that our team was not expecting. And I know other teams were also upset with the continuation of them into fall and winter. But we were able to slightly go back in the spring of last year, which was really amazing. And so even if it wasn't our full normal season that we normally have, being able to have even half of a season was just better than not having a season. And yeah, so that was just something that I got to experience just because my roommates were seniors. So seeing them go into new activities and new endeavors. One of them became a coach and is now coaching for younger girls and trying to influence that, especially through COVID. So that was something that I noticed, especially during the shift in March.
Well, it's I think, although we don't want to do it again, the pandemic, I think, caused us all to realize how lucky we were to be in athletics, to be teaching, to be together as a community, and having that taken away from us so suddenly. You mentioned, you just go to your last practice and then it's over, and there's something that's just wrong with that kind of experience. It's just not what we expect. And certainly as a college student, you're struggling, you're doing your classes, you're trying to fit all of this stuff into your schedule. It's already so complex. And then of course you're thinking all the time about the future and what the future holds for you. So you've got a lot on your mind, and then on top of it you have a pandemic, which just changes everything overnight. And I know as president it was very, very difficult for me to literally in the span of 2 days to go from having a college that was full of life and running at full speed to having to close 2 campuses, which, as a college president, the last thing you want to say to your board is, I'm deciding to close the college. That's really not a cool thing to have to say. But they understood we had to do it. But unfortunately, it froze all of those wonderful athletic activities, and we couldn't really go back to them. Shantey, during that time of the pandemic and when we were remote, did the teams, were they able to maintain any kind of contact with one another?
We really tried our best, I'm sure, as the rest of the college did. We looked for innovative ways to maintain communication with our students across the board. And we found ourselves utilizing Zoom, right? So we made sure that specific to athletics that our coaches maintain constant communication with our athletes via Zoom. They would do Zoom check-ins. That our athletic training staff, which is our sports medicine staff, would do check-ins via Zoom and telephone with our student athletes so that they checked on their physical health and also their mental health, right? There was a whole mental side of COVID-19 as well. And then, of course, our athletic administration staff checked in with our student athletes to make sure they were maintaining the grade because they were still students and they still needed to go to class, albeit via remotely. We were still checking in with them to make sure that they were maintaining the grade.
Well, and I think it's, since you mentioned it, I think one of the strengths of our college is that our students are also, our athletes are also fine students. So Ashleigh, you're a perfect example of that. You're a double major in two very complex areas, and you maintain very, very good GPA. What is your GPA?
Right now it went down, but 3.7.
It went down to 3.7?
Yes.
I think a lot of our audience would really think a 3.7
Okay
was
with
pretty
that.
high. But I think it points to the fact that our athletes are here, they're loving their sports, they're enjoying that ability, but at the same time, they're working on their studies, they're very serious students, and they're going to be going on into professions and into activities where that education is going to be very, very valuable to them. We have to take a quick break, but still to come, more about our return to campus.
Are you ready?
To work together and stand out.
Ready?
To find solutions that push us forward.
Ready.
To take on today's challenges and take charge of our future. With a world-class education at St. Joseph's College in Brooklyn, you will be ready. Attend an upcoming event to find out how. For scheduling information, visit sjcny.edu/BK events.
Are you ready?
St. Joseph's College.
Ready.
Set.
Joe's.
Are you ready?
To work together and stand out.
Ready.
To find solutions that push us forward.
Ready?
To take on today's challenges and take charge of our future. With a world-class education at St. Joseph's College in Patchogue, you will be ready. Attend an upcoming event to find out how. For scheduling information, visit sjcny.edu/LI events.
Are you ready?
St. Joseph's College.
Ready? Set.
Joe's.
Welcome back to St. Joseph's College, Living Our Mission. We were discussing our return to campus with a focus on student life and athletics. Shantey, we've returned to campus. I think we've done it really successfully with your help and the help of many others. We're well underway in the fall semester. We have student athletic activities going on right now. Tell me a little bit about what that's like right now, what kind of regulations are in place to make sure that everybody stays safe.
Sure. Well, we as a college have placed regulations. There are not so many regulations for New York State, although very interesting, we have two campuses. So we have some regulations that are in place in our Brooklyn campus that are not quite so familiar for our Long Island campus due to the New York City regulations. So, however, we have taken the stance that we are going to make sure that all of our campus community is safe and sound. And we have mandated vaccination for all of our groups here on campus. In addition to that, we are also under a mask mandate right now. But that doesn't stop us from having a robust campus life and student activity life. We are doing lots of programming on ground and on campus. We started the year with an on-ground orientation where we had that remotely last year. So on-ground orientation happened this year, and we have just followed that with a number of on-ground activities for the students so that they can feel part of the community again. And they are certainly excited to do so.
Well, it's a transition. You know, I mean, it's kind of a middle thing between being fully back and being remote. Ashleigh, what has it been like for you this semester?
So it's actually been a really big change than what we've seen in like recent, because of the last year and a half. But just having more on-campus events, both on student life on campus and then also in athletics at sporting events. I think it's a big change. Like, I'm very happy to come to campus and to see people again. Even with masks, I think just being around people was something I missed, especially during the last year and a half, because it was very different than my freshman and sophomore years. And so going forward and going to events I normally never would have gone to just because they're on campus and they're there, and to just see people and just to be around people is something I've noticed that everyone's enjoying, especially sporting events, like being able to conduct tailgates as SAC president and going to, go support women's soccer and men's basketball and all the different sports. has been something that I think we're all looking forward to, and just feeling more like a family than I think being like a distant family. And I know Zoom had a big effect, like it's good to keep connected, but Zoom can only do so much. And it's very different than being in person. And I love, like, even with the mask mandates and even with everyone being vaccinated, I think we all are making the best of what we can, and we're doing a great job at it. We're hosting events still, you know, and that's something that we couldn't say like a year ago when we could only do virtual events. So that's been a big change that I've really enjoyed, like on both student life and
Well,
academics.
you know, I teach every year, so I'm teaching this semester. I'm teaching in Long Island, and when I walked into the classroom, that's the first time in almost 18 months I'd actually had students in front of me, and I had shifted my class the year before onto Zoom, and the first thing I noticed when the students came on the screen was I had this great sense of sadness that they were isolated and that they were depressed. And I told the faculty at the time, one of our goals this year is to just bring some joy into the lives of our students. And so I think that the education that we gave remotely was good, but maybe more important, it was hopefully the joy of learning and giving the students something else to think about than just the pandemic. And the same thing would go with the athletic contact, the contact you had with your coaches and your teammates. I think another aspect to it, of course, is that we also have spectators, right? And parents and fans of the team. What has that been like for the spectator through this experience, Shantey?
So much so that we have had the same for spectators that we had with our students. So our student athletes in the spring, we did not allow spectators to attend our practices or games. So this semester we are able to allow them back onto campus. They do have to follow our health and safety guidelines. And they have to come and be masked, and they're not allowed to interact as much as they normally would with our coaches and student athletes. But I think they certainly appreciate being allowed back into the facility to cheer on their sons and daughters, some of them for their last year of collegiate eligibility. So that has been warmly welcomed by the parents, because those were really hard and difficult conversations just 18 months ago when we had to tell them that we were not having any participation at all.
Yeah.
So.
And that was a conversation conference-wide. Our entire athletic conference had to come to some kind of an agreement. Even though our schools are wildly different, we had to come to some commonalities when it came to spectators, and it was a problem for many schools. I'm proud. I think our parents and our spectators did a great job. They did the best they could to deal with it, but I know it was really hard for them. And like you, we had some really difficult conversations. I mean, the parents were terrific. They want to support their students. They want to support their sons and daughters, but they also understood the dangers involved. And so it was a very, very difficult time for them too. Ashleigh, when you think about the year and the experiences that you had in athletics, but also even in your coursework, what are some of the takeaways that you take out of the pandemic era?
Don't take professors for granted. In person, for sure, is something that I've noticed, and just even coaches in general. I didn't realize how close of a connection I had with professors until that was taken away from me. And we still had it, but some professors wouldn't show their face on camera, so I felt very disconnected from student life and athletics. It wasn't as much contact as we'd hoped, but you can only do so much, again, through Zoom. But I think one of my biggest takeaways is just to be around people, enjoy being around people, and I think you can only hold a community off for so long. And I think finally us coming back together has been one of the best things that I've seen on campus. Like, it just feels like, you mentioned earlier, like full of life again. And that's something that we missed in the past year and a half, was it just felt so dead, or there was no one on campus. And now I'm just seeing everyone again, and it just makes it fun to come to campus and to see my professors in person and to have that connection again is something that I felt like I missed, and I know a lot of students felt like they missed. So just not taking that for granted anymore, 100%.
Oh, I so agree that the gift of being with others and the gift of being able to share ideas and emotions and to actually see that person face to face. And it was especially hard for us at St. Joe's because we're a very person-oriented school. There are some schools with 50,000 students and classes with 120 kids in every class where it's not that big of a deal perhaps. But for us, I think our average class size in Brooklyn is maybe 12, and in Long Island it might be 15. So we're really oriented towards, a real personal form of education. So for us, it was especially difficult, and I know the faculty felt the same way. When I went back into the classroom and started teaching my students this semester, I just felt an overwhelming sense of happiness just to be able to say silly things to them. And even though I couldn't see their faces, I could see their eyes crinkling, right? And I could hear kind of laughter. And so that was, I'd so missed that, because that doesn't happen on Zoom. And then also at the end of the class, I can talk to the students individually if they're having a problem and kind of pull them aside and say, are you doing okay? Is there something in the course that I need to change? So you're able to make all those adjustments and the fine tuning that you can't make in that virtual world. And I think we took that for granted for a long time, right? And when that was taken away, we realized just how important it was. Shantey, for you as the director of the overseer of our athletic activities, but also as the vice president for student life, what's your takeaway from this pandemic experience?
My takeaway just proved something that I think I already knew, is that our students are resilient. They have resilience that I don't think we knew that they had. It's been amazing to see them transition, which could be really difficult in today's age of social media for young individuals in the manner that they use it. But I don't think, as Ashleigh just said, that they thought they would have to use it as much and not have that interaction. But they were resilient and they pushed through, and they were able to still have an engaged, vibrant lifestyle that kept them connected. So I think the resiliency and the perseverance, all those things maintained, and they did a really good job at that.
I think that's really true, and I think that what's going to happen, Ashleigh, is when you go later in life, you'll look back on this and you'll say, well, I could overcome that. I could certainly overcome this. In other words, it gives you a sense of confidence. None of us want to go through these kinds of tragic times, but to go through a tragic time and to survive it and to make something positive out of it, as you have, gives you that sense of confidence in the future that you could overcome all kinds of obstacles. And I think that in a strange way, that's a positive of going through a dark time. And our college is founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph, who themselves came to this country to escape some really dark times in France. And they overcame so much to create this college. And so that sense of resiliency is kind of written into our DNA at St. Joseph. So I knew even when we were going through it, we were going to be fine. I really did, because I knew that we had this kind of student as Ashleigh, and we have people like Shantey on our staff to help us do it. So thank both of you for the incredible job that you've done. As we look through this program and think a little bit about the importance of athletics and the importance of student life on our campus, I think all of you can see just what an incredible role that Shantey and Ashleigh have played. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for watching St. Joseph's College Living Our Mission. As both a college president and lifelong educator, seeing the smiles on the faces of our students as we resumed in-person learning was a joyous experience for me. I'm so thankful to be back on campus this semester and for the opportunity to see our students face to face as they work toward accomplishing their goals after overcoming so many challenges. I thank you for all your support as we navigated the pandemic and can't wait to see what the future holds for us here at St. Joseph's College.